Ricky, we're live. We did it.
We're live.
So, how long are you in town for?
Till tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm glad we can squeak this in. So I'm curious, Ricky, I haven't known you for that long, but this seems like a big change for you. I'm super curious. What's going on with what, in that mind of yours? Why have you made this change? What's happening? And for those who don't know you, just explain the change I'm talking about here.
Well, look, I've been on Rockstar Real Estate, Your Life, Your Terms show a couple times. And last few times was in my capacity as founder and CEO of Prince of Travel, right? So that was very much my first company, last chapter of my my career, my work. And now it's something new. It's called Age of Abundance. It's about the great transition we're living through across money, across intelligence, across energy, and just the transition, all of us. And for me, it's been, like for those who don't know me, like 8-10 years of traveling the world and building a business around that, especially for Canadians, leveraging points and miles and, being able to fly business class, fly first, and travel in the way that we could only ever dream of. And that was my dream for that period. And
everybody has that dream at some point. Yeah.
It was very much like my dream.
Let me keep your hands off tapping here. It's picking up on that.
Yeah, I got you. The start of my 20s and kind of the life that I dreamed of. And I pursued it and I did it. And you get to a point where, like it's a very privileged thing to say, right? But having been able to build a business around flying first class and, bumming around in presidential suites and luxury hotels around the world, it becomes the question of what's next, right? What is the more important thing to work on next? And I spent a lot of time with that question because it's been about a year for me.
That's a tough year to go through. So you were researching for your own purpose, basically.
Yeah, very much so. Looking for the right thing to work on next, the right problem to solve that the world needs, to be solved, and where I can allocate my time and energy and focus. And it's good to be back. It's good to be back, like in the game, in the zone, but in a completely brand new setting. And it's an exciting time and chapter and the start of this show, Age of Abundance. And thanks for, having me on and doing this collab, but hopefully more exciting things to come from it too.
Yeah. Why did you choose the Age of Abundance? So what was the thinking that brought you to this as the thing to focus on?
Yeah. So listen, during the time away, the first chapter of my work was about like my own dreams, right? And pursuing my own dreams. And having done that, there's not a lot of talk about like what it's like after, like once you've fulfilled the dream, right? Like, what does that feel like? Because, as somebody who has fulfilled my own dream, it's like, okay, I guess there's not that much that accrues to me from continuing to do the same thing. Keep trying to do the flights and do all the hotels and do all the, travel and really just continue to be known for that. So I kept going back to, what is it to be, what is it that's impactful? What is it that can be done that serves others or serves others in the most impactful way? And I keep asking, like, what possible games are there to be played that I'm not aware of, right? And by following that line of inquiry, you eventually arrive at, you got to understand the money and Bitcoin and why right now, 2026, right? And the mid 2020s is a crucial time for humanity's understanding of the monetary transition, especially around this idea of the transition from scarcity to abundance. I always say like this is a show about Bitcoin and understanding it, but also understanding why it's important, because at the end of the day, it's not a Bitcoin show. It's about human flourishing and how Bitcoin enables humans to tap into abundance and tap into a new way of coordinating, right? That results in
good word,
coordinating. That's the problem that we have, right? That coordinating resources, coordinating time.
Our resonance is off because we're not coordinating well. The information is not clear.
Something's up, right? And over the past,
we can all feel it in different ways.
Over the past 10 years, it's quite obvious that something's up, something's wrong. So for me, like, it was all about figuring out what that problem was, how to articulate the problem, right? How to tell people about the problem, how to make people be able to understand and start to appreciate what the problem was before being able to appreciate the solution and the role that Bitcoin plays. So that's why the show is Age of Abundance and not Bitcoin something, Bitcoin this, Bitcoin that.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I think you have to couch it in like, what is the end state, the destination that we're going to?
Mhm.
And so,
It's almost the natural state
it's the natural
that has been
state
suppressed.
of humanity.
Yeah. Okay. But, so I'm going to ask you more about that, but now I'm curious, what did it feel like when you realized what you were doing before wasn't serving you anymore? It feels like when you're describing it, traveling the world, you're using points, flying all around. I picture you on the bar on one of the Emirates planes or whatever, and then going to the presidential suites. And then you realize, because you're living the high life, I'm sure for a while it was like awesome. But was there a certain moment where you realized like, oh, this is like leaving me a little bit empty? Because everyone I've ever met in my life who reaches some arbitrary goal that they set for themselves, when they get there, they're like, oh, I'm kind of like lost now, or there's an emptiness to it. It's not serving me. It's not fulfilling anymore. Was there a moment, or was that a gradual thing over time?
Yeah. First of all, like for sure, that was very much the feeling. And I would liken it to, you've heard many people say that if they had a goal of like hitting a number, right? Earning $1 million,
Exactly. Yeah.
So for me,
I want this many properties, and then I'm going to be the best real estate investor that Canada has ever known.
Yeah. It's a very Canadian framing, right? For me, like it was the same feeling for all the flying first class and all the travel. And it was not, I would say it was a gradual process, but there was a moment in late 2023, I would say, when I was on I was like Swiss first class from Zurich to Montreal. It was like one first class experience that I've always longed for. And that was the first time that it kind of struck me. It was like, this doesn't quite hit the same as it used to, right? So there's like diminishing marginal gains from most things, right? So that was when I first sort of registered the feeling. But it then took all of 2024 for it to really sink in, for me to really accept it, right? And during 2024,
that must have been rough.
Still went through it, but it was like, it's different now. It's different than 2021, 2022. And then you mentioned like living the high life and whatnot. And I still think that for sure there was value to it. And for sure, like there was no way I could have realized that without having gone through it, right? And so, and don't get me wrong, like for anybody pursuing the same thing now, if you want to fly first class, business class, you still got to understand points, right? So
sure. Yeah. No, there's value there. Yes.
There's value to be had, but just sharing a personal side of it. It's like, for me, I took the value, I got tons of value out of it. And then I think it's very human, right? It's like, what's next? It's like, we're always we're always looking for the next problem to solve, whether it's for us or for everyone.
And then how did you come to the conclusion? Because I find that really interesting. You're a young guy. How did you figure out the base layer of what was going on in the world was a little bit off? Bitcoin presented a solution, and the age of abundance could be your interpretation of what needs to be discussed. Like, how did you figure out we're going to have a world of abundance, but the problem was something going on with the money? Like, how did you piece that together? That takes people, like some people live their whole life. This is something that most people never discuss.
Yeah.
How did you go through that process? Was it books, talking to people? Like, how did that evolve?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I think there's something in me that's always known, that's always had a feeling that, that the expectations that were set or that I was born into isn't always naturally like the natural state, or that there's more to figure out, right? There's more of a game to learn how to play. Like I've always asked the question, what game am I playing and what other games are available to play that I may not be aware of right now from a young age? I've always like been, I was a bit of a, whatever the opposite of a teacher's pet is in the classroom. Like,
were you?
I was always
you were shit disturber.
I was a shit disturber. I was always challenging like what was being told and what was being said. And that's what led me to,
frankly, you must have pissed off some teachers because you're a smart guy and then you're just fucking pissing people off. So they just hated you.
Tons of stories from back in the day, right? But there was also like, even back in the day, I was in grade 10, 11, 12. I was like, we were talking about like our careers and whatnot with my friends and whatnot. We were like, oh, we have to be investment bankers to like make it, right? And looking back, it's like, why? And why was that? Why is there this pull towards misallocation of human capital in terms of like financializing everything, right? In the world that we live in now I understand why, right? It's because the way that debt-based money shapes human behavior. But back then I was already under this spell, and I went through university. I did my economics degree, right? Which is part human nature, part fiat operating manual, right? And then I got into Bay Street, worked at the bank for a few years. And
you did? I don't think I knew.
Yeah, I worked at BMO for a few years. But during this whole time, like I would say the same pull was what attracted me to travel in the first place, because I figured out that just the act of traveling and of seeing different ways of doing things, different ways of life around the world is a pull out of the kind of spell that we're all trapped into, we're all born into, right? The whole the way of the one natural way, or the one way of doing things that we're kind of presented with.
Your expectations, the untold expectations for you, the default path that is kind of put upon you without your knowledge or acceptance.
Path, which is why, like, your life, your turn.
Yeah, it pissed me off.
It's the message. But that's what drew me to travel in the first place, and that's what drew me to the particular kind of travel that Prince of Travel spawned out of, right? Which is, hey, look, there's all these financial instruments, credit cards, right? And all these
so you were trying to hack this. It's interesting. It makes sense, everything you're saying, because you were hacking the system with the points. You were basically hacking the system in the way you saw it then, and it was with points and travel and stuff. Now you've taken it to the next level. Now you're trying to hack all of humanity and consciousness and the age of abundance.
Well, the way I like to put it is, we were optimizing within the system then, and now we're optimizing the system itself, right? We're picking what's the best system, because a lot of people aren't aware that there's an emergent new system as a base layer for human coordination, right? But now it's about, you, to your point, people don't talk about it, but it's about bringing these things we all feel into the light on this show, right? And putting a name to it. Debt-based money, okay? And fiat is the last stage of it. And there's a new way of doing money, right? We all need money as humans. It's how we coordinate. It's how we get what
it's how information is shared, how value is expressed.
Exactly. And there's a new way of doing it. And it's called Bitcoin. And so for me, that's what the show is about. But it's the same thread, right, as the first chapter, which was abundance through travel, right? Abundance of perspectives and abundance of experiences, which itself is a form of abundance in one's lives, and one that many people who followed Prince of Travel and did the thing unlocked. And now it's, how can I do that for not just like fairly well-to-do Canadians and North Americans, but for all of us, right? How can I play my role in all of us kind of understanding this transition that's at play, especially those who need it most?
And I guess this is a big question, but for those who don't understand it yet, how do you explain that the age of abundance is upon us? And maybe we're at the first inning, the first out, the first pitch, wherever we are in that process. But it's obvious to a lot of us that we are entering a world of abundance. The path might be a little rocky. It might like shake a few people, but we've already begun that journey. How do you explain that? Do you use money? Do you talk about technology? Do you talk about just like measurable things like computing power and artificial intelligence models? How do you share that?
I like to go wide and deep. I like to meet, audience members or whoever's tuning into the show, whoever I'm speaking with, like where they are, and just kind of, there's a whole, the nature of why this show is daily show, which, it's a big discipline, right? I have to go live daily, but there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and it's a very urgent topic. So one of the more concrete ways I think right now, in terms of messaging is, I think AI is a good entry point, right? I think it's a very mainstream concern. I think people can see that there's a potential to abundance, but they don't see the path. Like, we don't see the path to abundance through the current system, right? And so that's why I say, like, the AI conversation and the Bitcoin conversation is one conversation, because it's quite binary. If you have AI and debt-based money, it concentrates power and wealth, and it creates eventually a world that it's a very bad world for the vast majority of people to live in. Maybe it's not like, necessarily a world of war and destruction, but it is one of meaning being sapped away, right? And our life force and our energy being sapped away towards the very top of the control system, which is one and the same as the debt-based money system, right? And we try to explain like how money as we know it today, pieces of paper issued by nation states, right? US, Canada, are in fact debt tokens. And there is not broad awareness of this, but it's time that people start to pay attention and start to ask the question, like, okay, we're mad at the billionaires because they have $1 billion, but at the end of the day, what the hell is a dollar, right? And how do they get 1 billion of them in the first place? And are the people what we should be mad at, or is it in fact like are they just doing what we would do in the same situation, which is optimizing locally for our own lives and our own situations, right? Is it the people, or is it the way we coordinate this, everything from like the actual dollar itself to the system that underpins it, which then touches energy, right? And oil and all the different other ways that energy could be done, which Bitcoin is also playing an active role in introducing. So there's all these different domains of knowledge, right? The entire body of knowledge that we're going to take our time to kind of bring increased understanding to on this show, because that's what's necessary at this point in time. That's what's necessary to look. Everybody can feel that there's something off. Everybody knows it's very obvious that something's off. What's not obvious is what exactly is off.
Mm-hmm. We're such an interesting time, because I think I felt like something was off when I was in high school. So for me, that's like I ended high school in the early 90s, which I guess feels like forever ago. But I remember being told, like, you're good at math, so you should become an engineer. And I was like, really? That's like my whole life is going to be decided by this football coach who's a guidance counselor at high school, who said, your math came easy to me. So your math scores are high. You'll get into U of T engineering, which I did. And I just remember thinking, like, this is it. Like, this is the conclusion of my young adult life, that I'm just being told, now you go and become an engineer, and my life just dictated for me. And then I remember, so I didn't accept that. So that was my first revolt. And I ended up getting a psychology degree from U of T, which actually had some interesting courses in it. But then I remember getting a job in IT, because I did a postgrad for some IT skills. I learned about Oracle databases. And at the time, like, HTML was a big deal, and programming in BASIC and this kind of stuff. So I got hired at the Royal Bank, and everybody was applauding me. Like, everyone's like, you made it. You got the golden handcuffs. So that was like the first thing that scared me. And then I got there and I got my pay. And apparently I had a great job. Like, I should have been thanking this institution for the job. That's what everyone was making it seem like. And I remember, the salary I was getting, and then after taxes, I remember I could, like, once I bought like some new clothes to go to the bank and dress kind of like I thought I should, which is also another story, but I had no money left after I paid for my like GO train and lunches. I'm like, I can barely save. And then I got frustrated on the GO train, because everybody was like sandwiched together. And I'm like, this is just like sardines in here in the rush hour. I'll start driving. So I started paying for parking. And even then, the condos around the Rogers Center, they were all gravel parking lots back in the day. And I worked on Front Street. So I parked on those gravel parking lots, and it was an arm and a leg. And I had like nothing left. And I'm like, I don't get this. Like, I did everything that I thought was right at school. And then I got a university degree, and I was kind of just applauded. Like, you got a university degree in general and your life was set. That was kind of like the untold feeling that was given to you. And then I got out into the real world, and I'm like, wait a second, I get 2 weeks vacation. I can barely save enough. This is completely insane. Like, what are we doing? So that started me on the journey of like real estate, because I thought, if I get these properties, they generate some cash flow. The assets seem to grow. Everyone around me who I know who has some money has some real estate. That was my basic analysis. And then I did that for like 10 years or whatever. Then 2008 hit. And that's when I had my moment, because our family almost lost everything in the 1990s through a bad real estate crash here in Canada, in the Toronto area specifically. And then in 2008, when the financial crisis hit and everyone was telling us that everything was going to crash again, I went to Nick, my brother, and I thought, how are we letting this happen to us? Like, how does this system work? I don't understand money. I don't understand interest rates. I don't understand what's going on. And we did our deep dive into the money system itself. And that was our realization, like, oh my God, we're exchanging our finite time and our finite energy for a form of money that they can just print out of the sky, out of thin air, and create an infinite amount of. So I'm an economic actor who is exchanging a finite thing, my life force, in exchange for something that they can just print to infinity. And then the dollars that they do give me that they can print to infinity, I pay tax. I give some of those back to them. And in Canada, it's like half. I'm giving like up to half back to them. This whole system seems crazy. And that put me down the path of gold. And I wish in 2009 I discovered Bitcoin at that time. I'm not gonna lie, but that got me understanding money at like the base layer. I go, oh my gosh, I'm playing a game where I'm putting in all the work, but the rewards that I'm getting are not holding value, and I give some of them back to the people that printed it out of thin air. None of this makes sense. So it took me till like 2008. Like, I'm totally embarrassed to say it, and I didn't fully get it. The last 6 years, it really has dialed in. But that was a bit of my personal journey. It's a bit upsetting when you go through it.
Yeah, we all have our own journeys, right? We all have our own journeys to kind of like wake up to, okay, there's a game that is the expectation of us. Is this the only game that's available to be played? I think, look, the journey to Bitcoin comes through, like, for some people, maybe of
For me,
your generation, is like gold, right? Is the path. And then I think for me, it was like, I already grew up, my childhood was one of being rapidly transformed by technology, right? Like, the very start of my childhood, there was no, like, we just got a computer at home.
sure.
And then like by 2012, we were on MSN Messenger, Skype, and that was like shaping childhood and culture in a certain way, right? And so when I first became aware of Bitcoin, it was like, okay, it's kind of obvious that there needs to be money native to the internet, right? Like, there's the internet and there's like digitally connected, but the money still goes through all these big buildings and big institutions.
Mainframe computers.
That's a bit weird, right? So I think for me, it was like, because I was digitally attuned,
It seemed obvious.
it kind of was like, there has to be this money. Now, would Bitcoin be it? It took a long time, and I wasn't really paying attention for a long time.
Sure.
Because I was solely dialed in on like, okay, I'm gonna do the travel thing. And then for me, it was also like the thing I think for a lot of people to understand is there needs to be space to kind of go deep on the old and the new.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you need to create space for yourself, especially
Yeah.
if you feel like maybe you or felt, or I felt. Imagine how I felt stepping into back office big five bank, right? As a 22-year-old, it's like, is this the only game to be played? I don't know. Like, at least let me
I hope
explore.
not. Yeah.
Right? Let me try my hand. But then think about how many people have stuck to that,
Mhm.
right? Well, whether it's because of like economic pressures, or maybe like not everybody has the same like
Obligations that they feel they must
obligations,
meet.
risk
Yeah.
tolerance,
Yeah.
like whatever it is. The thing about Bitcoin, right? The thing about the new game that's now available for anybody on earth to play is that it enables that level of economic autonomy. And ultimately, at the end of the day, like, where we're going as humanity, like, truth to oneself, living one's truth, right? When you can have autonomy and control over your money, and nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can take that purchasing power and that property right away from you. The same way that, when you have debt-based money, when you have dollars in the bank, when you have things denominated in dollars in the bank, like real estate, stocks, whatnot, or gold that, you have to like secure yourself or put in a bank. Bitcoin's completely different, right? It's digital, it's information, right? It can be controlled, accessed just with words in one's head or securely stored. So that's completely different. Once you dematerialize wealth and dematerialize stored time and economic energy, it completely transforms the sheer volume, a sheer magnitude of games that are available for any individual to play, resulting ultimately in a level of autonomy and truth, hope, and abundance to oneself that we're about to see an explosion of going into the future, especially when combined with things like AI and whatnot.
It's funny. You're such an expression of what you just said. Like this whole truth thing was like, we now get to see Ricky living his highest and best use. So like he now gets to focus his time and his effort, your time and your effort, on the thing that you choose, gives you purpose, and likely you are the most talented in, because this is what you're choosing. You're likely good at it. So now the world benefits. Like, I benefit even just being around you, because you're out there being the best you can be. And it sounds so, like, someone listening to this doesn't like think about these things. It just sounds so crazy. But like, if you were forced to be an investment banker and you hated your life, the interactions with the people and the way it's a Seb Bunny line that I really like, the way you show up in the world, kind of the way you would show up in the world is maybe you'd be miserable on a Tuesday and give somebody a hard time at the coffee shop or cut somebody off driving or whatever. And that is like a second order effect of you being miserable in your life because you're not showing up in the best possible way that Ricky can. And that person getting cut off doesn't realize that they're now physical world is being affected because Ricky just cut them off. But the reason he cut them off is because you're not living your highest and best use. And I know that might be a silly example, but when you do this, if we have first hundreds, then thousands and tens of thousands and millions of people living their highest and best use, the world does become an abundant place. So
100%.
Yeah. So I feel fortunate that you're going down this path.
Like maybe I'd be miserable on a Tuesday, but maybe I would delude myself to become a really, really good investment banker and actually do a ton of damage through the continued financialization.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of people doing that right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why like the understanding of the old and the new, I think, is key for somebody to like really grasp the moment that we're living through right now.
Okay. So what is that moment? How do you explain this to people? What is this moment? What is the age of abundance, or what is this moment that we're in? What are you seeing? Because I think if I said that to some of my friends, they're like, Tom, like, okay, what the heck are you talking about?
Yeah, it's this is why it's a daily show,
Mm-hmm,
right? And this is why like it's
because we can't all feel it. You're saying like
sure.
The conversations I have here with inside our team and with clients, everybody feels something is just not quite right.
Mm-hmm. And to be clear, like, yeah, I'll do my best to answer your question first, and then I'll answer like why I have such high conviction, right? Because what is this moment? It's the convergence of a number of factors, right? It's not just one steep part of an S curve happening, right? So you can think of it as an exponential, like very, very rapid change in the world, structural change that all of society is going through. It's a convergence of a number of things, right? At the end of the day, I bring it back to the natural state of the free market is deflation. So when you have technology, which is ultimately just humanity advancing, ultimately just human ingenuity, right? Ultimately just
getting better,
humans getting better, you and me waking up every day to do more with less, right? Figure out what's next, figure out how we can do better for the next generation. It's the most powerful force, right? That any of us have access to. Ultimately, it's that. And right now, that journey, we've gone from fire to agriculture to industrialization to computing to AI. The machines are thinking, right? The sand and the rocks are thinking. And that's just like the steepest part of the transformation.
When you say it like that, that's wild.
That's crazy, right? Yeah. And so ultimately it's that, and that's coming into conflict with a form of money that has been growing for 400 years, about 400 years, right? Which is debt claims and a ledger that somebody controls. And fiat as of 1971 is the latest manifestation of that, where it has no link to anything, right? It's just dollars that we have this belief system and that we're all born into and that we still use up until now. But people were aware of this problem throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s, especially as we entered a digital world, especially as the early internet conversations were happening, and attempts were made to solve digitally native honest money throughout that time period, which resulted in Bitcoin as of 2009, right? And the journey of Bitcoin from then until now for 17 years has been one of growth and adoption in the wild, right? Bottoms up from between the people for a money that's by the people for the people. And that's a beautiful thing, because finally we have a form of money as humans that can be transacted honestly, right? That nobody can come in between a transaction between two parties looking to transact on a voluntary basis. That's something we've never had before. And so the fundamental story is one of rapid exponential technological change that is designed by its very nature, humans serving humans, right? Making each other's lives better, freeing up our time to use the capital that we have, whether it's our human capital or our financial capital, to do what we want with it. So providing autonomy and monetary independence to all of 8 billion people. That technology is widely, being perceived through a lens of the old debt-based money system, which is why people are scared about job loss, which is why people are scared about meaning, right? We as 8 billion people have never experienced what it's like to have autonomy before. We've always lived under kings and queens and control systems, and to accept and to allow abundance into our lives is going to be a huge transformation for all of us, right? That we all have to go through in our minds to say, like, in fact, this is what we now have. We just need to choose to have it. That's key, right? Choosing. It's the journey of Bitcoin adoption is not one of somebody telling you to do it. If you're lucky, you're going to live in a country where the head of state understands it and chooses it for their people, but we're still
Far from that. Yeah.
We might have to go through a few cycles of the opposite.
Yeah.
Right. But any individual can choose for themselves, their family, and their tribe, and their community. And that's the beautiful thing. But it does require an act of choice and an act of allowing that abundance that is flowing through to all of us through like AI, right? Through all of these tools that are emerging, that are rapidly growing month on month, week by week, day by day. Why I'm so bullish, why I'm so confident, why I'm putting my like personal brand and existing audience and people who followed me, right? People to whom I've already provided value. Why am I saying to them, this is the next step of the journey? It's because, well, first of all, it's my truth, right? It's the journey I've been on. Having gone through it, having gone from a state where I didn't know this and was part of the old system to now playing my role, I think it's a exciting, you mentioned the most interesting time, the most interesting thing to possibly work on. That's one. And two, if you study the old and the new and the system dynamics at play, the debt has to expand. It's, I'm not trying to win popularity points by saying that, right? I don't make the rules, but the rules are the math.
And why does that matter? Why does that?
Well, when you have money that is actually debt, the debt-based money, right? When every dollar that you have is somebody else's debt. And when the creation of new money, like it's only possible to service that debt, right? It's only possible for us to continue like servicing the interest and paying down the principal. And, there's 40 trillion US debt, 400 trillion global debt. It's only possible for that to be solvent. And the whole system that all of our real estate and stocks and bonds and whatnot rest on to remain solvent, to have any value at all, it's only possible to service that by creating new debt and for the debt to continually expand. The way that expands comes from the banks, right? It's a lending event. It comes from when a mortgage is issued, when a loan is issued, or at the fundamental central bank layer, right? When central banks monetize government bonds. That mechanism flows wealth to the very top, banks and governments, and those connected to it, politically connected, existing asset holders, the existing wealthy. And that has to drive increasing wealth inequality at the end of the day. One, the Cantillon effect, right? Cantillon, like Irish-French economist, kind of named the effect that when new money flows into the system through the top, and they have access to purchasing goods at yesterday's prices, purchasing assets before they go up, everybody else, wage earners, income earners, savers, only face the inflation, only faced increasing real estate, right? And so it's a structural wealth transfer from savers to borrowers, and that's the world we live in today. So there's the Cantillon effect, and then, even more perniciously, in order to upkeep the legitimacy of this whole system, you have to control what people think, right? You have to say this is the system. You have to.
It's bad if you use another money. It's not right. It's illegal. Pay your taxes.
At the end of the day, you have to like, there has to be increasing centralization, decrease in autonomy, right? Increasing government overreach relative to what government should be, which is serving the people with what the people need. There has to, in fact, the past 10 years in every country, not just the Western world, right? The global South too, is a story of governments becoming increasingly encroaching on individual rights and liberties. Governments increasingly looking to control everything, the money, the speech, the information. And here's like where I may differ from you, or from like what I observe and what I try to bring differently in the show, in Age of Abundance. There's nothing bad or wrong about this phase that we're in, because it's all the results of human incentives. It's all the results of like you and me, we're all, even the people who came before us, even the banks and the governments today, and the people, those institutions at the end of the day are composed by people, and they're just being humans.
Sure. They're operating at the incentives that they have in front of
them. There's nothing to point a finger at.
I like pointing the finger though.
I know.
Right.
I know.
I like it.
You like pointing the finger, but here's the thing: pointing the finger alienates people.
For sure. Oh yeah, for sure.
Pointing the finger.
People tell me that too, Tom.
Like, there's like us versus them. When in fact, it's just there's no like us versus them. It's just fellow human beings, and we're on this journey together, right? We chose
a more well-balanced, nicer person than I am, Ricky. That's the difference.
Thank you. I try. No, but I try, but I also try to think about like what shapes the message to be most effective.
Sure. No, there's value there. You're right. Absolutely.
And so I think about like, why did we end up in a place where debt was money? Well, because it was better than the thing before, right? Than the gold that could move fast.
Yeah.
And so it gave us so
It
much.
did serve a purpose.
So much purpose, so many advancements. It's just
you were going to ship your gold. You couldn't settle gold across America by train, and it would take whatever, like a week to get there at whatever was happening back then, like 150 years ago. And so when through a telegraph, if you could send some credit instrument financially and settle the transaction, it was better. Yeah, no, I get it.
So we needed it.
Yeah.
Right. And we kind of, and there's downstream consequences that the people who made decisions then couldn't have envisioned. And there's just fundamentally, as humans, we are flawed in the sense that if we can take some for ourselves, right, at everybody else's very diffused cost, then we will. And that's what we've been seeing. And it's like the whole system has reached a point where it's more serving itself and the system than serving the people that it was supposed to serve. So now, very naturally, as part of the same natural transition, people are asking the question, right? What's wrong? Like, what is happening? And people are figuring it out. So you and I have figured it out. It's on us to play our roles, right? And helping others first have understanding and then take the right actions.
Yeah, well said, Ricky. Yeah. It's listening to you say that I'm just thinking of like, you made me think of a practical example of the age of abundance with your example of possibly becoming an investment banker as one of your paths. I was recently listening to Jordi Visser talk about how he downloads the transcripts of, I think is the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang. I can't remember his name right now, the CEO of NVIDIA, but he downloads all his latest podcasts and YouTube talks because he's talking publicly like once a week right now. And he puts them into a folder on his computer, and he gets Claude to analyze all these transcripts and then suggest investment opportunities. And he's like, that's the kind of thing you would pay an investment banker before. You would go, if you had some excess funds and you had the ability to engage with an investment banker, you would start asking them, hey, like, where are we going to allocate here to get the maximum return? Now you can hear directly from the people shaping the age of abundance, the leaders of these companies, because they're out there publicly accessible through technology to all of us through podcasting and YouTube and all these things. You can download the full transcript. You can put it into AI. And you could say, AI, you're an expert investment banker based on everything he's been saying for the last 6 weeks. What equities, what companies do you think are going to explode in value through the trends that he is talking about, the bottlenecks that he is noticing in the supply chain of these things that we know are going to be built? Where should I invest? That's just like you and me or anyone on the street can now get that type of analysis. You could never get that type of access to these people before, or then get the analysis like you could now through using AI. So just that example in this one world, like, blows my mind.
It's crazy.
It's readily accessible to everyone. And no one knows that you can do this kind of stuff yet. Or no, I shouldn't say no one, but the vast majority of people don't know that this is at your fingertips.
We're in the very early stages of that. I'll just, like, my own example over the past few months that I've been like heads down building is, we're building a new digital experience on Prince of Travel. And that's like stuff that would have taken a dev team of 3 or 4, like probably like 6 months to do, which I was able to do in 3 weeks by myself, just using like the thing about Claude Code and like agentic coding harnesses, right, as of mid 2026 is compared to most people's understanding of AI, which is ChatGPT LLMs, right, like a chatbot. You can now get the AI to write code, which when you've written code and it executes the same time each time, it's deterministic, right? So there's no hallucination when you've written the code. And so that serves the business outcomes way better than like a chatbot that always has like 5 to 10% randomness to it, right? With the hallucination surface area. And frankly, with the current models of AI, there's probably always going to be that, because in the training, there's all kinds of conflict and all kinds of right? All the totality of human knowledge has all kinds of conflict in it because we are in conflict, right? So like, once you get the LLMs to work on code, which is the big advancement of the past 6 months or so, you can now apply that in a business context and do all kinds of crazy things that used to require human labor, right? In terms of an entrepreneur trying to like wrangle resources to achieve an outcome, to serve the market, to solve a problem, that can be done from idea to execution like 100 times as quickly or effectively as before, especially if you have a strong thesis around what problem needs to be solved, what is the gap in the market. And so you're right, if I can do it, you can do it. Billions of people can do it, and we're in the very early stages of that knowledge transmitting and people actually choosing to take agency and start building, right? Start building their ideas, start turning their ideas into and putting it out into the world. But what we're about to see, also tapping into this idea of the age of abundance, is an abundance of ideas from billions of people, right? That we now can use. And within the free market, we will choose which ideas win, right? Which ideas actually solve problems and are willing to pay for. Thus, those ideas will succeed.
Only the best will succeed.
Only the best will succeed. But compared to even last year, there's going to be like, 1,000 more options or people trying their hand at things. What do you think that does to, prices?
Oh, geez.
We talk about like prices should fall when ideas compete, right? It's very natural. We all understand like when there's more airlines competing, prices go lower, right? So when there's more individuals, entrepreneurs, right, people taking agency to put ideas into the world, prices of everything should fall, including like literally everything when you factor in energy, right? And energy is one of the biggest problems to solve. And what's preventing that? It's the debt-based money system, right? It's the system that we live in where money is debt and it has to expand to sustain itself. And that requires inflation for the average people. It's fucked up.
When I first started realizing that, oh my gosh, prices should fall. Like no entrepreneur gets into business. You're not going to go sell jeans unless you feel you can sell jeans of the same caliber or quality as your competitor for less. Generally, I know there's going to be brands and brand recognition, so there's other variables to take into account here. But essentially, you're not going to go sell jeans or sell shoes or sell a house or do anything unless you can do it better than the next person. Like that's just normal human behavior, normal entrepreneurship, normal economics. That's what happens. But when you count how these things are priced in dollars that keep getting created, so there's more and more of them in the economy, the technological advancements of making the better jean isn't reflected in the lower price because the dollars are printed so rapidly that even better jeans made out of a better quality, they're never shown and made faster with maybe less humans and less labor, less input costs. They're never really cheaper because the dollars are debased or printed so rapidly that those pair of jeans are always shown as a higher price. But then when you measure the same things in Bitcoin over the last decade, a money that cannot be printed, that is finite, then you realize that was like a big moment for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, when I measure this thing in this better form of money, prices in Bitcoin terms are coming down. Like a house that used to cost 10 years. I did this with a vacation home that we have. We priced it when we first bought it, Nick and I forget, I'm just going to throw, I think it was like, I don't know if it was like 100, 350 Bitcoin, 150. I should know I'm going to keep that actually for the next time I discuss this, but let's say it was 300 Bitcoin. And then, I don't know, 4 years later, it passes and it's like, this thing is now 100 Bitcoin. The price of the home, the age of abundance exists because we can buy things for less money if we're using the right money. It was just, to me, it was such a mind-blowing moment. And then the argument that people would pose back to me is Tom, well, you could do that with anything. You could do that with Microsoft, measure it in Microsoft shares or measure it in the S&P 500 index, which is valid. But Bitcoin is a form of money. It has all the qualities and characteristics of money. And these other things are not that. And that's what makes Bitcoin so interesting to me. And that's what made me first have the realization like, wow, we are using a kind of a crappy money here. If I can just change my life. And for the first time in history, I can just choose to use this form of money. I could save in this form of money. It just is an eye opener to me. It's like kind of changes everything.
Yeah, I'll add your point about the gene maker and then I'll come back to the Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. But think about the perspective of gene maker and like if you're an entrepreneur, you wouldn't go like the natural state is you would try to compete, right? You try to compete for margin by doing something better or being able to do the same quality at a lower price to the customers so that you can win business. And that's the natural state of entrepreneurship. That's, a 5-year-old understands it. And I think for a lot of people who get into entrepreneurship, the natural state of wanting to create good in the world and capture a slice of the value you've created for yourself. That's the story that's told. Compare that to now, what we have now, which is, how can I enter a controlled industry? How can I become politically connected?
Sure.
Right? How can I be part of the rent-seeking mechanism so that these infinitely printable dollars flow to me from their spigot, right? From the central bank or the commercial bank in the lending layer, so that I can then use these more of the infinite printable dollars that I have to win more relative to other people who are just wage earners, right? Whereas ultimately, at the end of the day, like, is that really winning for an entrepreneur playing that game? Most entrepreneurs have never even thought about this, right? Like
why would you really?
The dynamics of this, right? They just see that, oh, everybody like you saw, right? Everybody I know who's wealthy has a house. I should go into real estate and figure out how to play that
prices
game.
Go up. Yeah,
exactly. Like that is the state of kind of decision making right now, and it means leading us down to the continued debt expansion and continued like not good outcomes of that old system. Which, going back to that, is like why I think doing this is necessary, and why I think it will be successful, because the old system has to expand, and people need to run harder and harder to stay in the same place at the end of the day. And when you keep people in that situation for a long time, they wake up to the fact, right? So
I wonder what happens to the world in this age of abundance that you're talking about, because if I extrapolate this forward like 5, 10, 15 years, which happens kind of in a blink of the eye, I just wonder how it happens to like nation states itself. Like capital ultimately will go to where it is treated best. And you're going to have some jurisdictions, as you alluded to earlier, that might kind of fight against some of these changes that are upon us right now. And it's going to allow other jurisdictions to raise their hands and say, hey, we're open for business. We don't tax you as much. Dubai might be one of those places right now. I think Singapore might be one of those. I'm not too familiar with Singapore, but El Salvador might be an emerging place like that right now. So it's going to be interesting in the next 5, 10, and 15 years. What happens to the nation state? Can it survive? Do we get these smaller places, a state in the US, a city somewhere? Dubai is part of the UAE, but a lot of people think of it as like a mini city state. That's the way it's kind of discussed a little bit. It's going to be an interesting evolution geopolitically as this evolves.
You're already seeing that happen. So this is where I like to remind people that it's happening right now, right? It's not necessarily 10, 15 years from now, like that we like to wonder what's going to happen 10, 15
Sure,
years.
yeah.
And I find a lot of people, when they ask that, they're giving themselves permission to like not care until later. Do you know what I mean? It's like when I speak to a lot of people, it's like, when will this actually happen?
Yeah.
Then
you're like, it's happening now.
It's happening right now. Yeah. And the degradation of fiat and debt-based money is happening right now. It's causing all sorts of problems,
chaos,
turmoil, suffering that impacts human beings right now. So right now is when we should care. And right now is when we should learn and start to nudge our understanding, right? Because this takes time for sure. I say you need to create time for yourself to go into the understanding and then figure out how to take action. But it's about day-by-day progress, right? For the nation states, right now you're seeing El Salvador, from what we can tell, right, start to transmit Bitcoin knowledge to its people. Now, there's an interesting game to be played there, because for Bukele, right, at El Salvador, they in order to still remain in the good graces of the control system, USA and all that, right, there's certain actions he needs to take to do that. But at the same time, there's signs of grassroots Bitcoin education and AI education, right? And in fact, AI being integrated into medical systems, education systems in a conscious, intentional way on the ground for the people, right? For Salvadorans. And that's huge. Like at the same time, we can sit here and say that's something to be
it's incredible.
It's very incredible. Yeah. And okay, we can observe that, okay, Bukele still needs to maintain a bit of a stronghold within his domestic population, right? And certain actions that go into that may change in the future or may not. Time will tell, right? But you're seeing other countries participate in all kinds of ways. Like Bhutan's been Bitcoin mining for 5 years.
That's right.
About 40%, 50% of their GDP. That has given them autonomy from IMF loans and from the legacy control system, right? The monetary system. What are they doing with it? They're paying their public servants more, and they are building a mindfulness city, which is about to be a big tourism destination, right? Bhutan's up in the mountains, small population, and they're building a mindfulness city. It should be ready by 2029, and it's going to be a place to go visit, to learn about the country, practice mindfulness. And it was funded by Bitcoin Holdings. So they've mined it, then they spent some of it, and that's how Bitcoin should be used, right? As money. You can't do that with Microsoft stock or other stuff that's gone up. Dubai, Singapore are good calls. I think you'll see the nation states where decision making is more, where there's like there's mechanisms for rapid good decision making by the well informed leaders. Places like Dubai, Singapore, UAE, the Gulf. I think you'll see them be first movers in Bitcoin. You've already seen some moves towards payment rails, crypto, sort of this moving in that direction.
Aggressive with AI, yeah.
AI as well, innovation, special economic zones, low tax and whatnot. So I think the Bitcoin story will hit there first before you have these the countries where there's more of a political game, right? More of a game to be played. Although, interestingly, there's you never know who knows, right? You never know who knows and who's publicly said they know and who may in the future. And this is just a natural kind of phase of knowledge distributing, right? Humans starting to get it one at a time out of 8 billion.
This is an exciting time for you to be doing this. And I was going to share one other example about something with AI that just, you kind of caught me on that thing. I was thinking, I forgot what it was, just because I went down to El Salvador with my family, actually, when my son and my wife, my daughter didn't come on that particular trip. And just to see how much new development was down there next to a lot of the poverty that still exists, but you could see how fast change can happen. Like there's a beautiful new library in downtown San Salvador that has the education that you were talking about, zones for children. It was clean. It was beautiful, safe. And you could see right next to the downtown core, just the amount of poverty that El Salvador and San Salvador has had for decades. But the change was so obvious. And I'm like, if this is happening in the last 4 years, give this another 10 years in this country, what is this place going to look like? So it just makes me think how fast the change can come. And to your point, where people are like, oh, I'm going to dismiss this, when AI gets impactful in the future, I'll talk about it. Or when Bitcoin gets bigger in the future, I'll talk about it. But all the opportunity for all of us is right now. And when you're at the beginning of a trend, it's really where you can make the outsized personal gains. And if that's not even important to you, you can have the most fun.
Exactly.
Just have the most fun at the beginning because it's so raw.
Right now.
Yeah, exactly.
To be in the midst of.
So where are you gonna take this with Age of Abundance? You're doing a daily show. And then there's probably gonna be some spin-offs for you that you're gonna do some other stuff. Have you thought about this? Or right now you're committing to a daily show that you're gonna be putting out, talking about all these subjects, and you're gonna let everything else evolve from there?
I think daily show is the first step. Right. Because it's my skill set, right? I used to do tons of YouTube, and we'll play with the format, right? Maybe sometimes we'll have guests, we'll do a collab, where I'm like a week in. So it's just been fun. And to me, it's like back to this idea of being in pure flow state, living my truth, because for a while I was out of it, right? For a while I was in it with Prince of Travel in the early days and started like the first 2022, 2023, really the peak of post-pandemic travel, like getting the fix of travel. And then for a while I was like, okay, I was out of it and I need to be back. And I would say now when I'm doing the show during this 1 hour a day, I'm back because it's the truth that needs to be spoken. And it's, like I said, like the debt isn't contracting. It's necessarily expanding.
When you went through this change, to decide to do this, to step away from some of the things that you were doing, what has the pushback been like for you? You must have had some friends say, or that doesn't bother you in the least, but some friends must have told you like, Ricky, you got a good thing going here. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I guess there were times when it was like, the thing is, I don't necessarily need the decision to make sense to others.
You don't have a need for approval.
There's not really need for approval because
in high school, I could tell you told me the high school story. I get it.
You get it, right? You get what I'm saying. And I think the thing is, I think that's in everybody. And there are like these needs for approval. We're social creatures, right? And so how culture evolves over time is some people move first, and eventually, we now care about things that we didn't care about or couldn't even conceive of 10 years ago, not let alone 100, 500 years ago, right? Like you and me doing this show and, the ideas transmitting to others over the internet. So I've always just been like, okay, like my time's the most valuable thing. What do I do with it? And people will figure it out over time, right? It will make sense to the people that it needs to make sense to over time. The same can be said about like maximizing points to travel the world.
Sure.
Like there was a time when that wasn't a well understood thing, right? And it seemed like people thought that points were just like
You fixed that problem. People got it.
You know what I mean?
I remember when you
I
spoke
went
at one
through
of our events, people were freaking out about like these points and Amex cards, and everybody was going crazy with it. You did a great job with it.
So
So if you could just do that level of work with the rest of humanity on what you're doing now, that'd be appreciated, Ricky.
Listen,
You're on it.
I'm up to the task, right? I'm here showing up day by day. And then to answer your question, I think it'll start with a show. And these days, right, you need to have distribution of your ideas to then open other doors.
Yeah.
So hopefully there will be, maybe I'll kind of share with you offline a bit some of the conversations I've been having and potential things to work on. But hopefully we can also speak on air very soon about, new tangible things that we're doing in the Bitcoin space.
Yeah, it's exciting for me to see what you're doing, Ricky, because someone of my age, I'm 53. I feel like we need people your age, your generation to be talking about this stuff, because people are going to look at me and say, I don't know what this guy's talking about, real estate and gold prices. And now he's talking about Bitcoin. Like, I just don't get it. I'm going to dismiss it. Right. So to me, I'm not saying everybody does that, but it would be natural. I could see my younger self doing that. So to have you doing this, you're also serving me, as we know. So I really appreciate where you're going down. And after being in this space for some time now, talking about what's wrong with the money and what the opportunity is ahead in this age of abundance that we're looking at, to see more and more people get it and kind of come into this world, you can see we're on that acceleration path right now. So the next few years is going to be pretty wild.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, something else we need is, because I've been observing the Bitcoin space, right, and Bitcoin media for a while before entering the arena. And I think we just need like the next wave of messaging.
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
We need the next
first wave was necessary. It was good. It served its purpose. And you're right. It's time for another form of messaging, other voices.
Even to the point of like, I try to come from a point of like helping us all understand the moment we're living through, right? And when you look at waves of adoption of any tool or technology, you have the distinction between early adopters and the early majority, right? The early adopters for Bitcoin responded to the messaging around sovereignty and autonomy and tends to be more libertarian lean, right? And tends to be more of a
sovereign individual,
like us versus them, right? I don't want to be taxed. I don't want that kind of stuff. And Bitcoin serves that and has the properties to solve problems for that crowd, but it actually has the properties to solve problems for all of humanity, which is not going to necessarily need the same messaging, right? We, like the rest of the early majority, need to know how it helps them today, and it's different than like HODL, just like holding Bitcoin either, right? Like that phase has been a whole phase, and now it's like probably spending is more of the story than necessary holding, or understanding what happens when you spend Bitcoin versus spend fiat, what happens when you transmit value in this emerging ecosystem, right? And so a lot of new ideas I try to bring, but also this idea of, I think I'm very obsessed over this idea of like, it's actually a change in each of us. It's actually us allowing abundance into our lives, which is really hard when the conditioning runs generations deep in the opposite direction, because scarcity has been the entire business model of humanity, of the control system. And it's now a matter of all of us choosing to use all of these things that are available at our fingertips to make our own lives better and help each other, and like people to people. And like, I love that idea, and I want to like keep shining a light on it and talk about like the difficult parts, right? That you and I are currently going through. Of you ask me questions like, it must have been hard. It was hard in some, like, I'm not gonna, I had that energy of, I'm going to do what I want, which is why I'm here. But it was difficult to let go of previous versions of myself where I really cared about being perceived in a certain way or flexing on social media for my travel stuff. And I had to let go of that. That's not easy, right? That was a transition that I had to go through. And I want to talk about these things on the show, like your transition going from real estate to Bitcoin. You've been past few years, right, doing a bunch of, it used to be all real estate. Now it's like, hey guys,
our events are all about money and Bitcoin at this point. We still have real estate in there, and it plays a role, and it can play a role, but you're right. Without the Bitcoin angle, it doesn't work for me.
But I'm sure not everybody's been on board right away.
Yeah. We had some sponsors of the event say, if you keep talking like this, we're not going to sponsor the event anymore. And I explained to them, this is what I have to do.
Yeah.
Like, I have to speak this way. This isn't an option for me.
And it's not necessarily like the fault of those sponsors either, right?
No.
It's kind of like this natural There's 8 billion of us going through this journey of understanding,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a deep journey, and there's multiple phases, and the initial phases actually look very different than the deep phases.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm here for anybody who's going through any phase of their journey, and that's why it's like it has to be a high volume transmission of ideas.
And it's funny, with the emergence of this new form of digital money at the exact time where artificial intelligence is exploding on the scene. Like, I like the way, I think it's Adam Livingston frames it this way, that the Industrial Revolution replaced muscle and bone. And the artificial intelligence revolution is replacing what was left after that, which was intelligence. And if that's really happening, and we're in this moment right now, with a combination of a new form of pure digital money, digital capital, whatever you're going to talk, however you want to talk about it, at the same time where there's an artificial intelligence emerging that is going to be, I think, smarter than us if it isn't already. We are at a fascinating time for humanity. Like, we're basically birthing another species that is more intelligent than us. And with a friend of mine, has some exposure to Tesla and working on some of the factories that are putting out the Optimus robots. And he was in town last week, and he said, Tom, when you can put something like Gemini or Claude, or ChatGPT in a humanoid robot and see it walk out of the factory, it's going to absolutely blow your mind.
100%.
And that is coming. Like, that is right around the corner. He asked me not to share a few things on the podcast, but like, they're making these things. Like, this is here right now. That is going to be when I can have a humanoid in my house that can like do a small repair on my car that normally I would have to call someone for, but also have the intelligence of PhD medical science, where I can ask about, like, why are these supplements making me break out as a 53-year-old? Can you explain to me what's happening in my body? And it asks for my DNA work, of my DNA that I'll have, and my latest blood work, and I can give it to it, and it'll answer these questions very intelligently for me in like 5 minutes. It's going to blow my mind.
Look, when AI and robotics merge, and robots can create more robots with the AIs, and AIs can train new AI models, recursive self-improvement, right? Which is debatable whether it's happening right now, but some certainly think it is. What holds economic value that humans, can hold themselves? It's certainly not our labor or intelligence, right? You get to a point where, so then, like, how do we economically coordinate? These are tough questions. And there are inconvenient truths around the old way of doing things becoming obsolete, right? And all I see out there, unfortunately, is these tough questions being asked and people stressing about them without a credible answer, right? Not enough of the credible answer being spotlighted, which is where, what can't AI break? SHA-256, cryptography, right? Large numbers that even if you had the most powerful AI, it would take like, crazy amounts of energy beyond the universe to crack cryptography that anchors a new form of money that's digitally native. What are the forces here that we're ultimately talking about underpinning Bitcoin? It's physics and human interest, human self-interest, right? Two unbreakable forces that actually power a form of money, and it exists permissionlessly next to the old form of money that is neither grounded in physics, because anybody can print trillions with a big red button, or serving human interest, because you work for it and then the purchasing power leaks from it. So when you just put these two things side by side and play out the time, right? And then you add AI and these exponential transformations into it, and the chaos that's about to emerge, right? It certainly will be messy and chaotic.
And the opportunity.
That's right, because it can also be clear, right? There can also be maximum clarity if you understand the AI transformation the old way and the new way. If you get the depth of understanding, it can also be clarity and opportunity and excitement and building and creation, which is, I feel like ultimately, like, we're kind of stuck as humans, but what we're supposed to be doing all the time is creating, right? With each other, right? And from the gains of trade, from the gains of the value and ideas that come out of our minds, to create impossibly beautiful things. So it can also be that, if you understand the money that, the tool, that technology that we use to coordinate, that is actually anchored in true forces that serve humanity.
It's interesting that the fact that this now exists in the world, it's changing my personal behavior. And I find that fascinating, because I feel like it's not only changing my behavior in the world, but it's changing my own personal consciousness, in that I am now making different decisions than I would have around my spending habits and my decision-making, because these things exist, both Bitcoin and artificial intelligence. So it's interesting to me that you have these digital representations of things in a digital world that are making me change my physical response in the physical world.
Yes.
It's fascinating to me that we have because before, my interpretation of anything digital was like, oh, I can cut and paste it, I can duplicate it 1,000 times. Napster, like I'm from like the old 90s Napster generation. We could just download any song. MP3s were plentiful. There was no scarcity. Now that there is a form of scarcity that lives digitally, and that I understand and recognize that as a form of money, it's changing my behaviors and what I'm spending my money on, what I'm deeming as valuable in the world. Whereas before, when I deemed money as something you could always get, remortgage a home, refinance a property, work a bit harder, the money has no real value. So just go spend it on whatever flights you want or whatever trip you want. And I still want to do those things, but it was an easier decision. Whereas now I'm like, wait, hold on a second. I only want to choose the best things to spend my money on. And that forces the economy to show me better quality products, because I'm not going to part with my money unless it's the best thing, the best pair of jeans, the best pair of shoes, the best first class airlines.
Yeah.
So it's changing the world in that way in real time. And I can see it in myself.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. It's funny. Like, I think for me, it's even more prominent, the feeling that, oh, obviously we are going from analog to digital. That is because I grew up, like during my formative years was a digital transformation, right? It's even more prominent for Aiden, right? Your son and my son, right? Who's just gonna be born into a world where Bitcoin exists and that's the money. But yeah, to your point, like if you're going from analog to digital, you need a form of digital money that serves people. And we now have it, right? And we're just in the very early stages of people actually interacting with it and experimenting with it and using it and hearing ideas about it, hearing Bitcoin being spoken about in certain ways, right? Rather than the old ways. And then yes, in terms of like the way that it shapes your purchases, if you talk to a tenured macroeconomist, they'll say like, oh, there needs to be velocity of money.
Yeah.
Right. And why? Because you've created money, you haven't created the interest. So you need to keep the money flowing. And so like you'll see how it's, for the economists, like it's shaped their view of the world just from the training that was funded by the infinite pieces of paper in the first place. Right. Because if you have a mechanism for money creation, it's essentially as close to like Thanos's infinity stones that exist in this world, right? Ultimate power to create money that other people have to trade their time and energy and life force for. And so if you have that, you can shape understanding and education and broad knowledge for a time, right? Until the pernicious effects.
It's a bit too top heavy. Yeah.
Until it becomes a bit like, okay, obviously something is wrong with this, which is where we're at right now. But yeah, for sure. Compared to the whole velocity of money, got to spend.
Yeah.
And even the idea of GDP.
Yeah.
Right. Being a beast, you got to feed.
Why are we measuring consumption? Why don't we measure families' purchasing power as the state of the healthy economy? It's
crazy.
Crazy.
It's ludicrous.
Yeah.
Right. But now we have a new metric, a new way of looking at things, a new thing to measure by. Right. People think Bitcoin's going up. Really, it's a form of money in which the price of everything is going down, as it should.
Yeah.
Right. To serve those using it. And over even this conversation, we've touched upon like so many little bits and pieces of ideas that require more nuance and expansion.
Hours of exploration. Yeah.
And so that's the fun part, right? Just like having these conversations and helping people.
Cool. Ricky, thanks for stopping in and doing this. You didn't have to do this. I know between your schedule and my schedule, I'm glad we got it figured out to do this. So if anyone's listening to this who doesn't know you, because I know this is on your channel, but if someone's listening to this that doesn't know you,
yes,
where do they find you? The best place is on YouTube right now, The Age of Abundance.
YouTube.com/ at Age of Abundance Live is the URL. And if you search Age of Abundance, you'll find it. Yeah, we'll do a collab for YouTube after this. And listen, I appreciate you like giving me the audience too, because it's a humble beginnings on a new show. But hopefully some people tune in and it's daily. And I think of it as just me recording my video for the day, right? And people tune in after the fact too to like listen to that day's like breakdown or specific idea that I'm walking through. We probably covered like 50 different small ideas here, and there's way more to cover, and each of them deserves expansion, right? And nuanced understanding and walkthrough. And people can show up live to, ask questions in the chat and interact too. And I love doing that. So yeah, thanks for having me on, Tom.
You're the right person doing this at the right time, Ricky. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Cool.
It's good.
Yeah, you're for your